Okay, my name is Ashlynne Wind, and for this project, I'll be interviewing my grandpa, Albert Wind, and my dad, Albert Wind. Okay, so what do you remember about popular culture in the 1960s?
Popular culture in the 1960s. Wow, that was after World War II, and people, men were getting out of the service, and they were getting married, and they were buying houses, and they were having children, and
Baby boomers.
and which they call the baby boomers now, and they were working, and that's when mothers started working actually, and fathers and mothers were working to make as much money as they could so they could buy nice houses and have 2 cars, and so that's the way I remember the culture of the 60s.
Okay. How did 1960s youth differ from the 1950s?
Well, the 1950s, there wasn't I don't think there was as much drug use in the 50s. That was right after World War II. As it started to get into the 60s, it was the hippie generation, Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. 1969 was the great big rock and roll gathering up in New York. And I'm trying to think of the name, but Woodstock in 1969. And then the Vietnam War was going on, and people were being drafted. Men were being drafted. Women weren't drafted at the time. I was drafted, but I didn't allow myself to be drafted. I joined the Navy instead of going to the Army. Anyway, there was a lot of people protested that, and women were burning their bras, and everybody protested about everything back then.
And a lot of the music was.
Music changed. That was
protesting.
The 60s were when the British invasion, music invasion of the United States, the Beatles, and Rolling Stones, and I can't think of all of them, but you can do research on to find all the names of them. I can't think of all of them right now. But there was quite a bit of difference between the 50s and 60s.
What was Beatlemania like in your perspective?
Well, everybody at the time liked what they called rockabilly music. There was Chuck Berry was black, and other black entertainers there. Again, you can do some research and find out their names. Anyway, Elvis Presley was extremely popular, and then in '63 or '4, the Beatles came over. The Fab Four, the Beatles came over. They were on the Ed Sullivan Show, which was the premium
Talk show.
well, it was a variety show. That's the word I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more like Carson.
No, it was Ed Sullivan had all kinds of different musical acts and all that. The Beatles were on his, and the United States went wild. I mean, went wild. Everybody was looking in their parents' closets for old guitars and fiddles, or if somebody had played drums in a school, they were digging the drums out, and I was 15 years old when I was taken down to Covington and bought a California Stratocaster, which they were very, very. It was $303 for it and a small amplifier then. But now the California Stratocasters are worth thousands and thousands and thousands. But anyway, it changed everything. If they could get 4 people together, they could bang out a tune. You could go somewhere and have a party and make money, and it was crazy. We called them garage bands at the time.
Yeah, I think they're still called that now.
Still do.
Yeah. Was the entirety of Beatlemania, was it as intense as writers describe it today?
I don't read a lot about it. I mean, I listen to talk radio more than I read, but it's still talked about. I mean, a promoter from Cincinnati named Dusty Rhodes still gets on the radio with different Cincinnati radio personalities and talks about it. He promoted the Beatles coming here in 1966. A friend of mine and his girlfriend and my girlfriend at the time, we went over and listened to him at Crosland Field, and we couldn't get in. We stood outside, and you could hear him from the outside better than the people who were inside could hear him, because the people just went crazy. Girls.
I was telling her they couldn't even record them live because the girls screaming.
Totally. I mean, it was just the way it was. Just screaming like crazy. They had been brought here a day before that I heard them, but they got rained out, so they stayed in Cincinnati and they played the next night. We went over and heard them, but I've never seen them. But there's only 2 of them left now.
Dad was telling me a little bit about how that's how you and Camilla met. You want to talk about that a little bit?
How we met?
Yeah, he said something
okay.
about.
Well, I was like everybody else. There was me and 3 other guys, and we had guitars, and one guy had a set of drums, and I played rhythm guitar. Another guy played lead guitar, and there was a guy who did some singing. And my cousin in Latonia asked me to bring my guys down and play for a birthday party for a friend, Camilla. So we did, and that's how I met your father's mother.
See, I was wrong about that. I thought they met in the old city building.
Oh no, this was Patty. Patty had a party for your mom when they were moving from Latonia to 24th Street. So that's how I met her, and then I just started going with her. And
She was a big Beatles fan.
oh my God, her and all her friends. I mean, they were all just.
Well, I have some of her old records.
Did you see where she marked on their pictures?
Yeah.
Paul and John and Ringo and
Yeah, I've got them all up at the house. She took pretty good care of them.
yeah.
So what kind of legacy do you think the Beatles left after they broke up?
They were 4 extreme egos, and they just couldn't. And John Lennon was a freak. He took a lot of drugs, and he got hooked up with an Asian.
Yoko Ono.
Yeah, Yoko Ono, an Asian woman, and they did the whole drug route. The orchestras play their songs.
I saw a interview with Paul McCartney less than 6 months ago. It was when I was still in the house, and he was being interviewed. It wasn't an old interview; it was like very recent.
Yeah.
He said there was no doubt that John Lennon and Yoko Ono broke it up. There was.
Oh yeah.
People speculated about it and said that.
Well, she got him on. I mean, they all did drugs. They all smoked pot, and I think John did more harsh drugs. But
Well, they had to actually go to some. I'm trying to think of like a Maharaji or
yeah,
to get off the drugs.
And
Their music got really drugged
right. They're
for a while.
John Lennon made the statement over here. One of the times when they were here, that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus Christ. And boy, that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we read about that in one
Well,
of our.
wasn't Yellow Submarine when they were really bad on drugs?
I don't know exactly. Part of my problem with remembering a lot of that was I was in the Navy. I went in the Navy in December of '68. So, I mean, there was guys in there that were playing. You know, once we got to a regular duty station, but it took me away from. I didn't play anymore. I put my guitar up, but they went on and on and on, and their music is just. It's just. loved to this day. They make concerts out of them.
There were people that I went to high school with that were still obsessed with them.
Oh,
Had posters and the whole
It's-
9 yards.
it's crazy. I mean, I still love their stuff.
Do you remember how you first heard about them?
I was, I heard that there was going to be, I guess it was either 63 or 64. You'll have to look that up.
Pretty
But-
sure it was 63.
What was it?
When they went on Ed Sullivan?
Yeah, they went on the Ed Sullivan Show. The Ed Sullivan Show was a variety show, and he had, everybody was on Ed Sullivan. You know, Frank Sinatra, Dean
Keep
Martin.
down from there. That's,
I think she knocked my radios off too.
is that what happened over there?
Yeah. But anyway, they came over here and he lined them up at first, and they sang and danced and wiggled and jiggled. A lot of the older people, man, they thought they were going to be the downfall of the United States of America. And they had long hair, which we.
Yeah, they did the bowl cuts for a while.
Yeah, and they wore what they call beetle boots, which I had to have a pair of them. You know,
What did those look like?
they looked like they were black and they come up over your ankles.
No, never heard of it.
Oh yeah, they sold billions of pairs of them.
Did
But they
you?
were- yeah,
oh,
they-
sorry. Go ahead.
They changed the culture a lot, and like your father's grandma, she loved them. I mean, she was one of the older, but she just loved them. And there was a lot of older people, people born before World War II that just absolutely loved them. And some people thought they were the devil.
Well, that's everybody, I guess.
That's the way everything is.
That was the generation before my grandpa's generation.
Yeah.
The World War I people.
Did you get to actually attend any of their concerts or events?
Other than standing outside of Crosley Field when they were there in 1966 and heard them, I never, because I was working and I was slated to be drafted and doing that kind of stuff and working on this farm.
Did Camilla ever go to any
No.
of them?
But she never
You never saw him either?
she never saw him in person either.
Really?
Okay.
I never even thought about that.
Think about some of the media coverage that happened around the Beatles. How do you think that influenced the public's perception of them?
When they came over here and was on Ed Sullivan, everybody and their brother and sister wanted to book them. And like I said, I think I said previously on tape, a guy named Dusty Rhodes was a promoter and a talk show host, and he promoted them and brought them over here. And that happened in all the large cities all across the United States. I mean, then they just made an absolute fortune in a very quick order.
Did you ever feel like the excitement around the Beatles was overwhelming or too much?
Well, I thought, yeah. I mean, I thought so. I could not see going that crazy over a band.
I think it's everybody had a different kind of
Oh, and
mindset
people
on it.
went crazy. They fainted. They'd run out in the street. I mean, they tried to rush the airport when they came in, and oh my God.
What was your favorite song or album?
Oh my gosh. See, that's going to be hard. Golly. I didn't have to think about that. Well, the first one was Meet the Beatles. I remember that. And that was good. It had all their old, they weren't difficult songs, but it had all their old, and then I don't know how they went in sequence, but Meet the Beatles was their first album. And there was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band, and there was, oh gosh.
Did you have a favorite, Dad?
I'm trying to think of it too. See, I listened to it when I was a little bitty kid. The only time I really listened to it was with Mom while she was doing housework in the dishes. She always had it playing. And I liked all of it then. But I got to the point where I was tired of listening to it because I heard it so much growing up.
Every album had a couple of songs that were there, that everybody loved. You know.
More popular ones.
Yeah.
Well, if you think of it, we can come back to it.
I like the one with all the lonely people. What was that called?
Well, there was the Rubber Soul album. I like the Rubber Soul album.
I think I have that one up at the house.
Should have all.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're all up there.
All the lonely people.
Yeah.
Where do they all come?
Then there was an album called the White Album. It had nothing on it. There was no writing on it, and it was one of their later albums. There were more. I liked Rubber Soul.
So, how did Beatlemania affect everyday cultures, like the fashion or the hairstyles that people in America started wearing?
It changed it rapidly.
Like within weeks or months, or?
I can't say within weeks, but after they were on Ed Sullivan, everybody was all the guys were letting their hair grow. They were buying Beatle boots and wearing. I mean, and then the bands. When we got together, we went to Rick's Market City in Florence and bought matching jackets, and everybody had to we had to wear the same color pants or trousers, and of course they were all males, but I don't exactly know how it might have affected females and what they dressed like, but. The women went totally crazy.
I think there was a shift in the things people were wearing anyway.
Yeah.
In the 1960s.
Well, after World War II, yes, even before the Beatles. After World War II, and then into the 50s. Then after them, the other bands started coming over, and then and when you got into the 70s, you got into the disco era. Mm-hmm. Of which I love the Bee Gees. I mean, I just absolutely love them.
I have a lot of their albums too.
I was telling her that, and this was all before I was born, but a lot of her questions seem to revolve around the change between the 50s and the 60s, mm-hmm. and a lot of that happened in one night in 1969. So it killed off half the people that.
Yeah, and you were talking about
all the good doo-wop got killed off, and then that just opened it up for the British to come in and with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Kinks.
What were you telling me the other day? You said "This Is It, Boys."
The day the music died, 1969. Yeah. Richie Valens, the Big Bopper, and
well, they got killed in plane crash.
Plane crash.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that took out. I mean, that basically killed off that doo-wop. They had people called bassmen that sit there going boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And they quit doing all that. It all got replaced with electric guitars and bass guitars.
You said the same thing happened at the end of the rock and roll, didn't you? When Nirvana started.
Well, it wasn't a death. It wasn't a plane crash. But in 1991, when I was in high school, people were yearning for the. I hated 70s music, except for Pink Floyd, but everybody wanted that kind of music to come back for some reason. Not everybody, but there was a trend. There were a lot of people wanted to hear that stuff again. Grateful Dead and The Doors. But anyway, in the fall of 1991 is when basically all the glam metal from the 80s went out, and it ushered in the Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all the stuff that came out of Portland, which was considered grunge music. But that's when I considered music dying again. But it wasn't because of the plane crash like it was in '59. I
think there's a death quotation marks at the end of every generation that like sweeps in a new cycle of music.
And a lot of people don't know it, but Waylon Jennings was supposed to be on that plane. He switched seats with the Big Bopper, and he went and he had to drive. I don't know if they flipped a coin or whatever, but he said, "I hope your plane crashes."
There were so many. There were some groups, but there was like Bobby Darin. I can't think of all of them. There was the Righteous Brothers. There before the Beatles.
They were before the Beatles, really?
Yeah. Oh, and I can't think of all of them.
Everly Brothers.
Everly Brothers, Jan and Dean. I mean, there was tons of them, and they were like a flash in the pan. You know, some of them stayed popular. But when the Beatles came in, I tell you, everybody ran for. You know, it was crazy.
How did you feel when they broke up?
I really kind of hated it because Paul McCartney developed a band called Wings, and they had a few good songs, but it just didn't compare with the four of them just meshed and made music like and Paul McCartney made a band named Wings, and I'm trying to think of George Harrison. He wrote it. He did an album by himself. I don't know if he had a group or what.
He did the theme song to a movie in 1981. A really good song too. I'm trying to think of it. I can't think of the name of it, but it was a theme song for Time Bandits. George Harrison did that. It's the only thing that I knew of that he did after the Beatles.
Well, but McCartney and let's see.
Dream Away. It's called Dream Away. Paul McCartney's supposedly like one of the nicest people on earth. I mean, he's like right up there with Dolly Parton.
McCartney and Ringo were the only two alive.
Yeah.
Harrison lived in Hawaii. I think somebody broke into his house or something.
What were you telling me about the rights? About how?
He told me that.
Oh.
Michael Jackson had bought the rights to him, and then Paul McCartney bought them all back from him.
Yeah.
So now Paul McCartney owns all of it.
I think Paul McCartney is one of the richest men alive. I'm pretty sure him and Adam Sandler are like neck and neck.
Well, now Elon Musk is up there.
Well, yeah. Talking like entertainment wise.
Oh, gotcha. So their timeline from when they got together, came over here, and then between then and when they broke up wasn't really that long of a period of time. Do you think that the entire Beatle craze impacted your generation's approach to music?
They were still in their 20s when they broke up. They were still in their 20s when they broke up.
Oh, it absolutely impacted. It impacted music from then on into the future. I mean, because people tried to imitate them. I mean, if I think about it, it pops into my mind. I can think of all the British bands. You know, the Animals, the Bee Gees, the
Rolling Stones.
Rolling Stones. And a lot of people will argue over who was better.
So did they all come over after the Beatles did, or were they kind of around the same time frame?
I don't know that any of them came here before the Beatles. The Beatles they came first.
Yeah, they were first, and then Rolling Stones and the Kinks came like right after.
And everybody knows how long the Rolling Stones have stayed together.
They're still together. They're still touring.
Yeah.
The Monkees, like, they just tried to imitate them, basically. They did like a knockoff.
I don't think I've ever heard
The Monkees?
the Monkees.
Oh yeah. I saw the Monkees on Steel Pier in Atlantic City in 1965, I think it was.
So like
There's only
same,
one.
right in the same style of music, or
Yeah.
just persona the same?
And Herman's Hermits, I saw them.
The Monkees had their own TV show, though.
Yeah.
And there was four of them, and one of the Monkees was actually English. The rest of them were American. And there's only one of them that's still alive.
Mickey Dolenz was on an early TV show called.
Mickey Dolenz is the only one alive.
Oh, is he
The
still?
rest of them are dead.
I never kept up. After I went in the Navy, came out of the Navy, I was interested in our farm, and I was interested in getting a career that I liked. So I didn't. I mean, I listened to music, but it wasn't like it was before I went in the Navy.
Well, that's all the questions that I have. Do you have any closing remarks or statements or
No,
facts?
No, it was a change. It changed. But big things like that change things. A war changes things. I mean.
Are you recording?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're going to play it or not, but a lot of you mentioned the drugs and coming out of the 50s and the changing.
Yeah.
A lot of that was back in the 50s, in the early 50s when rock and roll started, and basically rock and roll came out of country.
Yeah.
It started.
We call it rockabilly.
And yeah, exactly. And a lot of people don't know it, but Hank Williams Sr. would go into the inner cities, and he got a lot of his influence from black entertainers. And
Oh yeah, Elvis did too.
and back then, all the black entertainers were all smoking pot, and then the white ones started, and that's where it came from. And
Elvis Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi. His main influence was black entertainers.
yep.
I feel like each music genre has its own kind of drug associated with it. You know, like rock and roll was more cocaine and that kind of stuff, and country's more alcohol than anything else.
Well, I don't know if I'd say that.
Pot.
Well, a lot of people don't realize it, but Hank Williams Sr. was a perfect example, but he wasn't the only one. Those people, they couldn't get up there and sing like they could unless they were drunk or high or stoned.
Well, that's still how it is
They couldn't do
in
it.
some of
Like
them.
George Jones.
George Jones. Well, I mean, they got to a point where they beat it, and they would use other drugs. They would smoke pot and use cocaine to get off of alcohol, but they couldn't go up there and do it unless they were drunk.
Right.
Waylon Jennings was another one. But they wouldn't let Hank Williams Sr. play on the Grand Ole Opry because he couldn't do it sober. So they wouldn't let him in the door.
And there was a lot of religious folks
Yeah.
connected with the Grand Ole Opry. But no, the Beatles was a big deal. Made a lot of change. I mean, but they evolved into all those other bands.
Yeah. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. I appreciate you guys answering my interview questions.
Well, good luck, granddaughter.
It was way too many questions.